Ooh. It is your witchy friend Grace from Small World's Big Adventures with a little Spooktober announcement before our review of the heart-stopping game Dead of Winter. This week, and the next 2 weeks, we will be giving away a game from our personal collection. This week's game is Alice's Missing, a heart-stopping role-playing game about a missing girl. To qualify, you must live in the United States and comment on at least one video this week, October 8th through 14th. We'll then randomly choose a winner from the comments. Also, everyone who comments throughout the month, the 1st through the 30th, will be entered for a brand new copy of Horrified, a maddening cooperative board game with iconic monsters. We'll announce the winner by commenting on one of the person's comments and announce on each Sunday's video who has won. The more videos you comment on, the greater chance you will have to win. So let us know your thoughts on each game. Hi, I'm Gracie, and this is Scott with Small World's Big Adventures, building community through gaming, and today we're going to review Dead of Winter.
Dead of Winter is a game for 2 to 5 players. It plays in 1 to 2 hours, certainly a bit longer if it's your first time. The game is $60 on Amazon, and setup, teardown is about 15-20 minutes on the longer side. In Dead of Winter, you take the role of a group of survivors trying to survive a harsh zombie-filled winter. You will leave your colony to search local areas for supplies. You need to build up enough supplies such as food and fuel in order to survive calamities that come along, and you have to be able to survive both the harsh cold of winter and the zombie attacks that slowly build up over time.
And we're really curious what your favorite zombie movie is. I know what my favorite zombie movie is, and it might surprise people. Not a horror movie person whatsoever, but I do really enjoy, what is it, Shaun of the Dead?
That is a movie.
Yeah. It gets a little too graphic way at the end, but I do enjoy it.
My favorite zombie movie is probably the remake of Day of the Dead.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was really well done, where they're surviving in a large mall, and I think that works pretty good.
Nice. When we come back to the game and reviewing it, we review our games on a 5-point scale, starting at terrible, bad, mixed, good, and excellent. And to kick it off, player agency. How did you think player agency was in Dead of Winter?
Player agency is excellent. Sometimes in a game like this, where you've got constant problems or calamities that happen every round that everybody has to pitch in with to work towards and complete, you can be on such a razor edge that if you make one mistake, the game is basically just over. And then, we've had this discussion with some of the other games where that just tends to remove so much player agency because you then don't have any choices. And this really kind of doesn't do that. The balance there just works in such a way that you can do almost anything that you want on your turn and still have it in some way contribute to either your long-term goal or your short-term goals. Because if you don't succeed at those short-term goals, they're not going to be enough to destroy the colony in just one turn, unless your luck is just really bad.
I also thought player agency is excellent. Whether you have one character or 4 characters, you have options. You don't even have to leave the main base to still be helpful. But kind of throughout, you can make your individual decisions and still contribute to the success of the group. And then along with that, you still have your secret objective that you also can take actions to help support that, even if it doesn't support the group.
Yep.
When it comes to mechanics, I think mechanics are good. They're pretty straightforward. There's a crossroads card that gets drawn on your turn, which may or may not go off. And then you roll your dice, and based on what your dice are, you can do different actions. So I think the mechanics are good.
Yeah, I put mechanics as excellent, and I'll kind of discuss this a little bit in the next category as well. But the way the game plays out really all kind of comes together to weave essentially a cinematic narrative in a lot of ways. The danger continuously builds up from almost nothing at the beginning to almost overwhelming towards the end. Even when you're doing well, it tends to be life and death in the last few turns. The danger and the risks are almost always spelled out way ahead of time so that you can balance what you think you can accomplish with what might end up being a problem. It's rare that you'll have something come up that is just a really bad catastrophe that instantly kills a character or causes a problem that is almost unsolvable in the game. You'll usually see that coming once or twice in a session. You'll roll the really bad one is a bite. If somebody gets bitten, then that character instantly dies, and that can actually, in the wrong spot, kind of spread out. But even then, you have options of what to do to handle that. The crossroads mechanic, actually, I think is you mentioned it, but it works really well in this to help with that narrative. The person to your right draws a card, and they get to see there's a trigger moment on that card. For instance, if a character on your turn travels from one location to another. So if you never travel, that card doesn't get used. It just goes to the bottom of the deck. But if it does, then this narrative happens that you read out, and then you have almost always have a choice to make between two things. Usually they're generally good choices, but sometimes they're dangerous or sometimes they're bad. And that helps define a different story basically every time you play, which is really neat.
No, I agree. Theming, I think we both agreed it was excellent. But why did you think that?
I think that this game, compared to even other kind of cinematic or storytelling games that we have, really rises to the top of the pack.
Yeah.
Everything mechanics wise and gameplay wise focuses in on this individual story of what your survivors are. The crossroads mechanic works great for that, but it's not alone. You've also got the actual goal of your team. Every player has their individual goal, which is kept secret. Some players one player in most games anyways, could be a betrayer and actually trying to hinder it, but that can look similar to the regular goals, such as one of them is you need to hoard food. And if you're doing that, it could look like you're a betrayer, but you're not. And you can get kicked out of the group. The zombies work great because they aren't individually, the zombies aren't a problem. They're not dangerous. They literally don't do anything until there are too many of them. And they slowly build up as the game goes on. And if you're careful, you can get rid of them and keep them pretty low. But if you're doing that, you're kind of not doing other things, such as searching for supplies that you desperately need, especially as the game goes on. You tend to pick up more and more survivors, but also survivors that can't aid you. So all they can do is eat and draw more zombies. So it really does a good job of building up the tension and the danger as the game continues, again, till that last couple of rounds where things are not out of control unless you've had a string of bad luck, but they definitely feel tense.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. To touch on things you didn't touch on, you discussed the narrative, but like the way they write the different things, like makes you feel like you're in a post-apocalyptic like story.
Yeah.
It definitely evokes like intense emotions and like whatnot. But also like when you're looking at the artwork of the cards and the board game and all of that, it very much aligns of this like cold, dark zombie world. And so I think from the details of how the game plays to how they executed it in the build and the narrative, I think just ties it all together really well.
Yeah.
So,
an additional note on that, one, it could have just been a zombie game and that would have, I think, worked. But adding it being it's the middle of winter and the cold is a problem actually does add an interesting dynamic to the survival aspect. The other thing, and you probably didn't realize this, was the Crossroads deck. A number of the cards have a special icon on them that you can remove if you want to play with a slightly younger audience because they are more adult themed issues that come up.
Very cool.
And I think that was a very smart choice in what they were designing.
Components. What do you think of components?
I thought components were good. there are cardboard cutouts for all the zombies, and there's 2 different types of cardboard zombies. And then there are, I'm not sure how many characters there are, but there's got to be a couple dozen, it seems like.
At least 2 dozen. Yeah.
So there's a cardboard standout for each character because they all look different. Each character has their own card with their abilities on it. The board is nice, and then it's got cardboard locations that you can go to. So the components end up being good. There's a good amount of them, and they're solid.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the strongest part of the components is honestly the artwork. Like you have cardboard cutouts and traditional cards and whatnot. So like in that sense, it's not all that like fantastic. But the detail in the artwork is really, really good. So whoever did that, great job.
Yeah.
So had they had like a little more elevated like figures or whatnot, it would go into the excellent category.
Sure, yeah.
But solid, would not be not disappointed having spent the money we did and got the components we did.
Yep.
Overall enjoyability, I think it's good. Why it's not excellent for me? Not a huge horror person. Zombies are my least favorite horror thing. And honestly, I think what's the biggest detriment is depending who you're playing with. It can be a long time before you take an action again.
Yeah.
Bigger groups, like longer time between your turns. But then you also have somebody who's like a little bit of a molasses Joe, or a molasses Matt. Then that also adds to it as well. And there's not a lot for you to do when it's not your turn. Yeah. Besides hold the next person's crossroad card.
If you're the one holding the crossroads card, you're watching, sure.
Yeah.
I rated excellent.
I know you did.
This probably hits my top 10 favorite games of all time, almost certainly. You're not wrong in the amount of time you're sitting there, and in a second edition of this game, I would probably do something where you can only use one character at a time rather than all the characters on your team get to go, because we had one player who only literally had one character because his second character died in the first turn. I had 2 characters through most of the game, but we had another player who had 5 different characters by the end of the game, and their turn would take a while.
Yep.
But again, the theming for this game and the mechanics, I think, just works so well. I do enjoy the theme of zombies and the survival aspect in the middle of winter. It scales really well. I don't think you've played it 2 players yet, but I've played a number of times. It works, and that'll be one of my takeaways too. But it works well at 2, and it works well. We played recently with 5. It works well with 5. Again, it's a little bit longer, and that is kind of a complaint you can level at it. Is it's a long game.
Yep.
Some of the games that are designed like this, especially the more cinematic kind of storytelling games, tend to be long, so that's something you just kind of have to accept. But it is a longer game.
Yeah, I think I'm not opposed to a long game, and thankfully neither is our gaming group and whatnot. It's just that it's between turns.
The waiting between turns, and that is a very valid valid complaint. But
because if you think of something like My Father's Work, again, 3-hour game, but then everything moves so quickly.
Yeah,
you don't feel like you're waiting.
Yeah,
but it's a good enjoyability.
Yeah.
My overall takeaways is it definitely has that building intensity and apprehension without being scary. Now, I will say in general, I feel like it's probably hard for a board game to be scary, like a horror movie would be. But it does create that anxiety, anticipation as more and more zombies, especially if you're not dealing with them. And then I like the balance of, to have more turns and more actions, you need more people. If you have more people, you have more people to feed or keep warm and all of that.
Yep.
And so there really is it's not just a given that if you get an outsider's card, you should play it.
Right.
Especially because they all come with one helpful person and one not helpful person. So I like that balance of what you need versus like what you can sustain.
Risk versus reward kind of a thing.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
And then I've already said it, but the artwork, it's so good. It's detailed and fits the thing perfectly.
Yeah.
What about you? What are your final thoughts?
So narrative, again, it just it has been neat to see games evolve over the period of my life.
Spry 20 years.
So short. But to see games be able to have a interesting storytelling aspect to them and still play well as a game is, it's a privilege, I guess. And this game does it so well. This game does the narrative aspect, just the storytelling so well. There are honestly only a few games that do it as well as this. Most of them, weirdly, are horror games. I really like the tenseness of the game. I like that it is tensed, but throughout basically feels balanced.
Yeah.
It is rare that you run into a turn where you feel like you were just cheated.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of games like this that kind of run that razor's edge kind of have moments like that can just feel super unfair. And there are small moments in this that can feel that way. Sure. But again, they're not usually it's just it kills a character and then that's it. Whereas other games you can simply lose the game.
Yeah, it's like a deluge.
A cascading error can in turn 3, you're going to be done by turn 6 because you've essentially lost. I really like that aspect of it. And then, as I mentioned, it scales well. It actually does play really well at 2 players. It plays good at 3, 4, and 5. Again, other than you're kind of waiting a while for your turn if people aren't going quick. But the overall gameplay still feels balanced and good at those pretty much at every level.
Yeah. If you like games like Arkham Horror, the 3rd edition, or Last Night on Earth, or even Horrified, you're probably going to like this game.
Yeah.
I would definitely say it's worth just giving a chance anyways.
Yeah. Arkham Horror, especially the 3rd edition, is another really good cinematic storytelling game. Horrified is a good co-op game where you've got kind of a thin margin. I mean, both those games kind of do. What was the other one?
Last Night on Earth.
Oh, Last Night on Earth is less storytelling, but it's a good zombie game.
You like
zombies. If you like a good zombie game, you might like this.
If you liked our review, go ahead and hit the like button. If you want to see more game reviews, walkthroughs, gamekeeper advice, or really anything board game related, go ahead and hit subscribe. And if you hit that notification bell, you'll be notified the next time we upload. If there's nothing else, we'll see you next time.